Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's EnRoute webinar. My name's Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today, and our presenter is Aaron Clapp, Application Specialist at SAi. He knows everything there is to know about EnRoute, and today he'll be showing us how to use the rapid texture features in EnRoute. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have either about rapid texture or any other EnRoute topics, so feel free to put those questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything that Aaron discusses, we'll be sending you all the links here this afternoon, so look out for that. And that's it for me, so I'll turn it over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. Well, so what we wanted to do here in this webinar is kind of expand some of the things that we were talking about in our previous webinar, where they actually had quite a few requests to talk about rapid texture and 3D. And so we decided that this would be the perfect time to go ahead and do that. So we're going to talk about 3D and rapid texture, and then we're also going to go over how to apply some different tool paths to a 3D object to kind of create some custom looks as well. Because it's not just rapid texture that you can use, you can also use some other things as well. So I was actually already playing around with it, but what I'm going to do is we're going to clear everything out here that we have on screen. And we're just going to start from the base that we have here, and then we'll just go from there. So we're just going to start it with our text here and clear off the 3D here. And let's go to... Okay, perfect. So this is just some text that I wrote up, and this is kind of where we want to start for today, because I wanted to try and use something a little bit different. So we have this text here on screen, and what we want to do is we want to throw just a small 3D texture on it. And first of all, I'm going to make sure that it's at 0, 0, because I was playing around with it earlier. So we want to make sure that's at 0, 0, so top of the plate. Because remember, when we do anything at top of the plate or anything in 3D, we always want our line segments to be at the top of the plate when we add our reliefs. And then once we've added the reliefs, then we want to move them down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say add relief, and we're just going to create a real basic relief. I'm going to do rounded, and I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to actually just scale it to the height, because if I just click normal and adjust it by angle, I don't actually know what height that's going to give me. I'm not actually sure. And so what I want to do is I want to scale it to height. So no matter what angle is chosen here, my height is going to be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to hit apply and then close. And then we'll just hit the light bulb to verify that's what we want. And that is, it kind of gives us a nice little smooth, rounded feature to that. So now what we want to do is we want to add some rapid texture to this particular job. So what I'm going to do is let's turn that off for now. I'm going to actually copy this, and I could have done this before I applied the relief. I just forgot to. So I'm going to copy it. So copy, go to layer 2. I'm going to paste it active layer, and then I'm going to delete the relief. So again, I probably could have done this beforehand, save myself a step of deleting the relief, but I forgot to. So we're just going to slap this into layer 2, and we'll talk about, why we want to do this. So while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and group this. I'm also going to go back to layer 1, and I'm going to group this. And mainly, the reason why I want to do that is just because when I click on it, I want to be able to not have to drag and select it. When I click on it, I want to highlight everything. So first, we're going to move this into the material, because that's kind of the final form of the look that I want to get. And so we're going to go to Surfaces, Align to the top of the plate. So that's going to push it down into the top of the plate, and that'll be perfect for us. Rapid texture. Okay, so now rapid texture, and we have a ton of webinars and videos on how to use rapid texture. So if you want to learn specifically how to use rapid texture on its own, I would definitely check out those videos because they'll be very, very helpful to you. They're very detailed. They go into a lot of examples of how to handle masking and things like that. But what we want to do here is typically with when you're doing rapid texture with something else, the order of which you do things is kind of important. And so that's going to be crucial to the way we do it. Now, the reason why I set up these letters in the background here is I made sure to copy them and paste them to active layer so that they're exactly in the same spot, because I'm going to need to use this as a mask. And we'll just, in fact, why don't we just show a demonstration when I don't do it? So if I hit rapid texture and I go to, and we're going to just use the standard noise texture. Whoops, not standard noise, sorry, standard symmetric texture, and hit apply. Well, this is what happens. It does apply my texture to the letters, but it also applies it to everything else. And I don't really have the time or the desire to go back and delete all the lines that I don't want. So I'm going to select this, delete it, get rid of it. This is where the masking comes into play a little bit. We talk about this in more detail in some of our other videos, but that's why I put this in this layer, because I want to mask it off to limit it to just the letters here. So before I hit my rapid texture, I'm going to highlight my 3D texture. And notice that I don't have all layers turned on right now. All layers is turned off. So I only see what's in the current layer. So I highlight my 3D, then I turn on all layers, and then you'll notice in my perspective view that this popped up, the little black line. Now, on my main top screen, you really didn't see any differences. You're actually not going to see it because that line is exactly on top of the other one. So we don't really see it, but you can kind of see it show up in all your other views. So I select my 3D texture, I turn on all layers, then I hit my rapid texture, and because I have my letters in the background grouped together, when I click on the edge of the line, I'm going to get this little highlighted blue area. So you can kind of see that. That indicates a mask, and that indicates that it's going to apply whatever rapid texture is going to apply it to those letters, and it's going to mask it off in that area. So that's kind of the important thing. Now, again, we talk about this in our other video as well. This is a very the reason why we have these specific steps in here is because we're adding 3D to the option. If you were doing this with just no 3D and just some text, it would be a little bit different. And so I would check that video for that. But in this case, we're going to select this. We got it all ready. We've highlighted our masked area, and now we can decide what settings we want to use. I'm going to change the offset. This is the spacing in between each line that's applied. So I'm going to go ahead and hit preview so you guys can see it here. And it doesn't preview in the perspective view here, but you can see that our pattern is fairly wide. And I think I want to reduce that a little bit and make those lines a little bit tighter. So I'm going to switch this to 0.1 and then hit the preview again. And now you'll notice how much tighter of a pattern we have. So that's going to give me a little bit of a tighter pattern. And then I'm going to change my vertical amplitude from 0.2 to 0.03. I don't need this to cut super deep into these letters. I just want a surface cut, just like a little surface scratch or a surface line cut. I don't need it to go halfway through the material. So I'm going to make this vertical amplitude fairly low. The vertical amplitude controls how deep the lines go in the Z. The vertical amplitude or the horizontal amplitude applies to what the variation is between the lowest point and the highest point of the wave. And so I'll leave that the same. If I put that at 0.5, for example, or let's just put it at 1 inch so that we can really see it. Now you can see how the waves go much higher and much lower. So vertical amplitude is Z, depth, height, and in depth. And then your horizontal is your, I guess this would be your X or your Y axis, depending on which way you have it rotated. Um, I'm going to leave that back at 0.25 because I don't need something quite so radical. I'm just looking for something that's kind of more straight. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and we'll see what happens here. So you can see one of the things that you'll notice is that as we look at our perspective view, you can see the lines kind of come down, and then they follow the little hump here of our texture, and then they raise back out. So that's exactly what we want. I'm going to go back to top view here just to kind of focus on this for a second. So at this point, I'm ready to start toolpathing. It's kind of that simple. By default, the software automatically extends the line half the diameter of the bit outside of your mask. So that's just something to be aware of. It does this so that you can complete the cut properly, so that it always goes at least to the edge. Because if it went half the diameter in, you'd always have incomplete cuts. And so it always extends the line a little bit past so that it makes sure and cuts the edge. And in this case, that's not going to be a big deal for us because we're just going to come along here with the routing as an end mill and just chop this off anyway. So I don't care if there's little extraneous lines out here on the edge or not. That's okay. That's going to create the nice contours or the nice effect all the way to the edge. And so I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to change it or do anything with that. I'm going to let that be because then we're just going to cut it out later. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my rapid texture. And I'm just going to hold shift to grab all these. And then I'm just going to group them together just so that they're grouped together. So I don't have to re-highlight them every time. I'm going to go to an engrave toolpath. And in this particular option, it doesn't really matter what my depth is going to be because I'm going to tell it to follow contour. This is the only time you would ever use this case is if you're using rapid texture or you're specifically telling the bit to follow the shape of the line. So when I click this, it actually ignores your depth. So I could put a depth of 50 in here, 50 inches. It wouldn't do 50 inches. It would follow the contour. So this is now irrelevant, but I do have to put something in here in order for the OK button to become available. So I'm just going to grab my 90-degree conic here. I think you could use any style of bit to create different effects. So if you used a ball end mill, you'd get a little bit different effect versus a conic versus maybe an engraved tool or something like that. So you can kind of play around with the different tools and get different effects out of rapid texture. That's one of kind of the nice things about rapid texture is that you could have the same set of lines and create different effects based on the tool that you have. So that's kind of one of the powerful things about rapid texture. So I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to hit OK. We've got our toolpath now. And then I'm going to start putting on a toolpath for my 3D. So I'm going to zoom in here, make sure I have my 3D selected here. Oh, you know what? I need to turn off my layers because it was selecting the part that was in the second layer there. There we go. Select my relief. So now it shows blue and red. And I'm going to apply an island fill. And this is going to be pretty basic. It's going to be a 3/8 inch end mill. I'm going to set it to 1 depth because 1 inch, that's how deep my material is. Now it's not going to go that deep because we're going to tell it to look, we're applying it to the relief. So if there's not a relief there, it won't go past that. So, and in my settings here, just so you guys can see, I went ahead and put this at 85% for the fill overlap so that we get a nice smooth texture. Now I did apply an overcut because I do want this to go past the edge of the material as you can see here. So if I hit OK, applying an overcut, normally when you apply an island fill, it would go right up to here. So you can kind of see how this toolpath butts up against here. That would be normally where it would stop. But because I told it to do an overcut, I wanted to actually cut past this, because this is actually a common problem with 3D, is that if you just use a standard island fill with no overcut, sometimes you don't get the rest of the 3D finished, because when you're using a curved bit, the tip of the bit is right here, but over here is a curved part. So sometimes you get a little bit missing. So I always like to apply half a diameter of the bit or a little bit less. So in this case, I went a little bit. I think I put in, what did I put in there? Overcut. Okay, so yeah, I didn't do quite half the diameter of the bit, so I just did 0.125, and that is sufficient to get that center part of the bit past this edge of the material, so that I make sure and complete the rounded edge of my 3D piece. So knowing that, I'm going to now go to layer 2, and I'm just going to throw on a really simple routing offset, because all the way through the material, nothing special here. This is pretty standard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on all layers, and I'm going to check my 3D simulate, and we'll just see what this looks like in 3D. You can kind of see there now it's creating a nice cut pattern for me, and it's going to eventually cut this out. There we go. So now this, this has a nice little effect to it, a little bit of a striping effect, in addition to having my little curve. So what this actually does is applies these lines to the curve of your 3D object. So you could do this with V-groove letters, or say V-groove, but letters that you've created as a V-groove in 3D, or if you've created some pyramid letters that are in 3D, or any kind of shape, you can add this to. So let's just kind of go over that one more time. We'll hit done, and maybe let's change up some of the parameters a little bit. So let's just grab this, and I'm going to delete the toolpaths, and then I'm going to come in here. Oops, there we go. Just delete these and get rid of them. I'm going to keep my relief the same, and we're just going to switch up the way we do the texture. So I'm going to highlight this, my 3D parts, turn on all layers, click on my rapid texture, and then before I start changing any settings, I'm going to click on, now in this particular case, it ungrouped itself because I removed the toolpath, and that's understandable. But so in this case, I had to select each part. So if you had them grouped together, though, it wouldn't do that. And then let's just choose a different texture. So let's try something like, this. And let's do wave texture 1. Let's see what this does. Oh, that's I think some of those, yeah, those aren't the ones I want. Okay, let's go with this, and let's just make some changes to this. Let's go 0.08 on the offset, so we're really tight together now. And let's go horizontal amplitude. Let's go 1 inch on that. Actually, let's go a little bit more. Let's go 3 inches, and let's kind of get ourselves a nice, there we go. Let's get ourselves a nice kind of pattern like this. It kind of gives us a lot of variability. Nothing's going to look similar or the same. And then we'll just change our vertical amplitude to, again, probably 0.03 because we don't want it to cut that deep necessarily. And then preview, that looks good, and apply. All right, so I see that my selection for my mask didn't work very well. So let's correct that. Hold on here. Can we, there, let's just get rid of that part. And there's still some left in there. Okay. You know what? It'll be fine. For what we're doing, I think it'll be okay if I just leave them in there. It's not that big of a deal. So let's grab these like we did before, group them together, and then go to my engraving. I'm going to use the same settings basically, just to kind of see how we can change things up a little bit here. And then we'll throw the same island fill on it just to kind of keep things consistent so that we can see what the differences are from one piece to the other. We'll throw our island fill on here. All right. And turn on all layers, and let's preview this. And again, so this is the nice thing here is that you could add this to any sign or any 3D object that you've created, any of the textures. So for example, if you want to do like a bamboo texture and then add a texture, a rapid texture on top of that, you can use all the symmetric textures or the standard textures up here under the surface menu. Where are they all? Am I blind? I'm blind. Okay, here we go. So you can apply this to all of these textures. So if you already have these textures applied, you can also do this to any of those. You don't have to just use, the rounded relief and stuff like that. It works for any relief. Let's see. I think that canceled our preview. So let's simulate that again. So kind of similar, but now we're getting much more kind of a wavy or style here. So you can see here, you could change this to a ball end mill, and a ball end mill would get you probably deeper grooves and deeper cuts. If you used a bull nose, it would definitely give you some deeper cuts. But this kind of gives you a nice little neat effect that you can use on some of your 3D in addition to your already three-dimensional parts that you've created. So that's adding 3D texture or rapid texture to a 3D object. I think it's the biggest thing is making sure that depending on what you're doing, make sure you get that order correct so that you can create the mask. And in this case, we wanted that mask, so that ordering was kind of important. Let's talk about from here then, let's go and discuss, okay, how about other types of toolpaths? What are some other examples of some toolpaths that we could apply that would kind of make sense for 3D? So quick, let's just draw an arc on screen. We're just going to draw this together because I think it would be helpful for everybody to kind of see this. All right, so, well, that's not what I wanted. Went a little too far with my arc. Okay, I keep doing that, and I think my mouse, there's a bad spot in my mouse pad that my mouse does not like. I'm going to take my mouse pad off for a second. There we go. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a little arch here. And so I'm going to go to draw, edit contours. I'm going to do an offset. And I'm just going to do an inch, seems fine to me, to the outside, apply. And then I'm going to do an internal, select my line again, and apply. And then I'm going to connect these. I'm going to connect these two so that they create some kind of a closed contour so that I can apply I've got my snaps hooked on here, so I'm just going to snap these together. Oops. I'm going to highlight the whole thing except for that middle line. I don't need it, so I'm going to hit Control, click, and subtract that one from the selection. And then I'm going to go to Merge Selection. So I'm going to merge this together so that it creates a closed contour. So here we got a closed contour, and I'm going to type some text along the top here. So let's do text tool. Actually, you know what? Just to be sure, I think I need to go to lines. Let's see here. Edit contour segments. No, sorry. It's under here. Invert open contours. So I just want the contour going this direction. Mainly just because if I type text, I want it to kind of do what I want it to. And I naturally, left to right is always the way stuff is typed. So I'm just going to click on my line here so that it follows the arc of the line. And Route 7, that looks good to me. In fact, I'm going to hit close. I'm going to highlight the text, and then I'm going to go up here and say edit spacing. And I'm going to click on the text, and I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Maybe we'll do this. Okay. I'm going to right click to get out of that tool. And then I no longer need this line. That line was just there so that I could type some text in. And then I'm going to, actually, you know what? Let's go back a few steps. Let's actually edit the text again. I'm not quite sure I'm super happy with that. So because I want that to actually, I want this to actually be a little bit lower. Okay, I think that's fine. We'll delete this. And then here's what I want to do with the text. I want to lower it like this so it's in the center. There we go. And let's grab this. Let's convert these to curves because you always got to do that if you want to toolpath it. And then let's just apply the same basic 3D texture here so that it's just kind of easy for us to work with. So we just have a little bit of an arc here, or a little bulge here. And what we want to do is we want to take these letters and we want to carve these letters into the surface of that 3D texture. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this and move it into position like I always should. So align release to the top of the plate so that we're inside the material. And then I'm going to highlight my text and the 3D object both at the same time. I'm going to go into my engraving, and I want to do some V-groove letters here. So I'm going to say, let's just clear everything here. I'm going to say in 3D engrave the toolpath. Oh, I got to have a tool. How deep do we want to go? Let's go 0.1. And I'm going to say 3D engrave. Actually, let's do 0.2 because it'll make it easier to see. So I have my 90-degree conic. I have it set to a depth of 0.2. I have the 3D engrave option turned on. So that's going to create a perfect, it's going to create a perfect V-groove letter for me. And then the last option that I need to apply is, which by default is applied because I highlighted, because I selected a 3D object with my text, it automatically knew that I wanted to apply it to the surface. So I'm going to set this to carve into surface. And I'm going to set it to project. The float option is for very specific instances that this won't really cover, but we want to choose carve into surface because we want to carve it into the surface of this 3D object. and then we'll just choose the project option because we want it to project onto all the sides of the piece. Click OK. And here's the key, right? We look at our toolpath here. That looks fairly normal. Nothing special there. But if we follow here, you can see that there's a little bit of a curvature to that. You can kind of also see it here. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a curvature to the toolpath. So let's go ahead and apply the same island fill that we were using for that other thing. Overcut is fine. We'll leave that at that. Click OK. And then let's just preview this. And there we go. So now you can see, if we zoom in here, you can see that we do have a nice curve going on here, and that these letters, and you can kind of see it more distinctly here with the 7. Whoops, my computer's being a little slow here. Come on. There we go. You can kind of see that with the 7, there's a little bit of a curve here. And so what that's done is that it's created that 7 and it's cut it into the curvature of this object. So that would be applying any kind of 3D text or 3D toolpathing directly to a 3D arc or 3D texture or anything. I could do this with any of my textures, not just the round ones. I can do it with any texture I want, as long as I follow those steps. Now, let's just try something else, for example. Let's try something completely different. So get rid of the text, and let's just draw a line. I'm going to use the snap to a nearest contour and snap to the endpoints, and I'm just going to draw a really random line. We're just going to kind of do this number here. And again, there is no precision to what I'm doing here, except for I didn't want that to happen. Let's start that over. In fact, let's go full screen here so I can focus on that. I don't want a line double clicked on there. So let's just do this here. This. There we go. Okay, so I've got a nice little line, and I'm going to highlight the line and the 3D part. I'm going to go to engrave. This time, I'm going to remove the 3D engrave toolpath, because in this case, I have an open contour. So the 3D engrave doesn't work with open contours. So I'm going to uncheck the 3D engrave, but then I'm going to leave the carve into surface options checked, and then I'm going to leave my depth the way it is. I do not want follow contour checked in this particular case, because the contour is not actually, the line is not actually bending with the object like it was with the rapid texture. The rapid texture actually bends the lines in order to make sure that they fit the contour of the 3D. This is not doing that. We just drew that line freehand. The text, the same thing with the text. The text is freehand. So those were flat objects. So that's where the follow contour would want to be unchecked. So just note that. Click OK. And let's take a look at our view here. So you can see that the line is still straight, but it has created these curved toolpaths into this particular material. So let's go ahead and apply our island fill here real quick so that we can see the curvature of the object when we apply the simulation. Let's back this off just a little bit so it runs a little bit quicker. There we go. And there, just like that, I've created a 3D object that has kind of a texture, kind of unique. It's not, this is the end of our texture, by the way. This is just the this is the so we can kind of know what's going on here. This right here, this flat spot, is actually the edge of where I applied the overcut to, so that it would finish the edge of my 3D. And I have that on both sides. It's hard to see on this side, but there's a flat area right past here. But I can see here that as I look at this, I've got a nice curve, and then this line that I drew creates a nice kind of cool pattern. So, you could use this for all sorts of different things. This is kind of just one kind of little crazy example, but you can create all kinds of neat carvings into an already existing three-dimensional object. So this kind of adds just a new layer of possibility to 3D and what it can do. You can do this, and you can do just 3D texture. You can add rapid texture to 3D. You could add 3D engraved letters, V-carved letters into your 3D object as well, and make sure that they follow the contour of the object. You can create patterns like this out of straight lines, out of geometry that you just drew by freehand. You can apply them to your 3D object. And so there's a lot you can do with that. And hopefully this kind of gives you some better options for creating something unique, one-off, custom, that no one else can create. And that's kind of the purpose of these tools kind of all meshing together, is that there's kind of an infinite possibility, right? I could think of something for this, and you could think of something different. But the idea is get your mind kind of thinking and make something that's completely custom that no one else can make. That would kind of set you apart from any other shop, is being able to do stuff like this. So this is applying rapid texture to a 3D object, and then applying drawings or just freehand drawings to the same object. And that's how you do that. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have or would like more details on rapid texture, I would check that video out. There's a ton of settings in here that can kind of be a little confusing as to what they do and how they affect the rapid texture. Check those out. We do go over everything. We go over wavelength, offset, all this stuff. We go over panels. We go over masking, setting these different parameters and things like that. How to use the randomized and symmetric, when to use the wave and the noise. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely check out those webinars. I think we have 2 or 3 different videos on that on our channel. So that'll kind of give you a good idea as to how to get the rapid texture to do what you want it to do, and then you can apply it to anything 3D. So are there any other questions on this? I know this is kind of a jump off from the last video. If you didn't get a chance to see that, I might have you go back and check that one out too. But any questions on this?
While we wait for any questions, I'm just going to post in the comments here a link to our YouTube channel, and you'll also, I can share some links in the follow-up email that you'll receive today. So you can go back to the video and watch it. Yeah, Dwight, all the webinars are posted to our YouTube channel, the recordings. So all these past webinars, the webinars that Aaron was talking about that go into more detail about rapid texture, they're all on our YouTube channel.
This is one of those topics that I know kind of builds on top of a lot of what we've been doing over the last few months. If you've been following us in our webinars, we've been kind of talking about 3D, kind of how to do some toolpathing in 3D and kind of building on each topic. This is kind of like the culmination of all that, is being able to mix, several different techniques together to kind of create something very unique. And so I know I didn't go into a lot of explaining some of those some of the nitty-gritty details of why I chose the tool pathing options that I did and some of that in more detail. But if you want to check those out, again, we have an entire series where we talked about a lot of these different steps, and we kind of worked up to all this. So if you have any questions on that, I definitely check those out, because we did work up to this one. So
Yeah. And I'm not seeing any questions come in now, but I'll say that if you do come up with any questions after we end today, you can always add a comment to the YouTube video of the recording of this webinar, and we'll try to answer them there or refer you to somewhere where you can't get the answer. And you can always contact our tech support. You can find a link for that on our website. But yeah, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I think we'll just go ahead and close it out for today. Thanks, Aaron, again for going through this with us, and thank you all for joining us for today's EnRoute webinar. We'll have the link to sign up for the following webinar in the follow-up email that you'll receive later today. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinars or other announcements. You can sign up for that on our website. Thanks again for being here. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.